Hello, and welcome to Insurance Agents Talk Shop. I'm your host, Doug Coombs, Chief Marketing Officer at SIAA. Today's episode is Bundling Insurance with Other Lines of Business. I'd like to introduce my guest, Sean Kirby, Insurance Agent at Performance Group in Pendleton, Indiana. If you would like to learn more about Sean or the Performance Group, please visit performancegroupindiana.com. So, full disclosure, Performance Group is a member of SIAA and specifically Underwriters Alliance of Indiana. Welcome to Insurance Agents Talk Shop, Sean.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm glad you could join us, truly. I understand that you've been an insurance agent for about 3 years now. Can you tell us about your road to becoming an agent?
Yeah, it was a road that was forced upon me, honestly. I listened to a lot of these podcasts, and you listen to everybody's story about how they accidentally ended up in insurance, and mine's similar in the sense that I didn't choose it. My dad chose it for me. So I was 18 years old, and at the time, my dad had his own financial practice as well as a tax practice and a few other things. And 18 years old, he made me get my insurance license. I had no idea why, and he never really told me why. He just sent me to the class, and I went down there and did it. I ended up going to school afterwards. And then when I came back, he was actually the entire time in an agreement, a purchase agreement to purchase an agency. And at 22 years old, 21 years old, however old I was, they closed the deal. She was ready to retire, and we bought a small book of business. And that's kind of how, I got into the business. And that was really just the start of everything that I've learned about this industry. And I was not prepared for it when I first got into it, though. I can tell you that.
So how do you feel about it now?
I've learned to love it. At 21, being an insurance agent was not exactly my plan or my goal, but I can honestly say that I love this industry. I've learned to love it. It was not something that I loved right away, though.
I understand. So as many have said, you did not aspire to become an insurance agent.
No, I did not. I don't even know what my aspirations were. When you're that young, you do what you're told, and you kind of figure out where you fall in line. And I've learned in this industry that I remember, and this was a conversation with my Underwriters Alliance of Indiana. I think it was my recruiter, Billy Romine. She's one of the best people in the world. And they were talking, and I was 21 years old. And I remember somebody going, "Well, what's your niche?" And I go, "What do you mean? I don't even know." I thought it was P in the letter NC. I didn't know it was P and C. Like my depth of knowledge was not very deep at that point. And at that, we bought a one-person agency. So I took over as service sales and marketing and everything else right away at 21. So I've learned a lot, and I still haven't found my niche. I think when you look at the breadth of what insurance is able to offer, that being a generalist does not serve too many people, truly. So I've figured where I fit in, and I've had a blast kind of figuring that out the hard way.
Gotcha. So it kind of sounds like your dad was being a good parent and providing some guidance or path for his son.
No, not at all. And I say that, in jest part way, because obviously he's given me an amazing opportunity, but he did the best thing in the world by, he was not in the property casualty business. He was a financial advisor, still is, and he never stepped foot in my office because in his eyes, when he bought the agency, he wanted to make sure that the client stopped in my office and dealt with me. And to that, I appreciate it, but there were a lot of long, hard nights where I didn't know what I was doing, and I learned a lot of my stuff directly from my underwriters and asking good questions.
And that's a common theme I've been hearing on these podcasts, and that is agents relying on their underwriters, which I just wanted to note since you mentioned it. So that's an important component of learning insurance. It certainly seems to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've learned that there's a lot of people that try to avoid underwriting sometimes.
Yes, I haven't heard that on here too much, but I'm aware of the concept.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So, okay. So let's get to it. The title of this episode is Bundling an Agency with Other Lines of Business. And by that, I mean sharing space with related but different business entities and potentially clients under one roof. Can you explain how Performance Group is structured and how that helps your insurance agency sales? And does that help flow both ways?
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2004, 15 years ago, well, now 16, 17 years ago, my dad opened his financial practice, and he had all this, plan to laid out of what kind of businesses he wanted to own. And the first thing he wrote down was property casualty insurance. Independent agencies don't come up for sale very often. So we actually didn't even purchase until 17 years or 13 years later after that. So he wanted a way to have leads that pay him to then eventually move to the financial side. And then in 2009, we actually started a tax practice, and then now it's grown into an accounting practice and a payroll practice and all these other subsidiaries of that. And what it's really allowed us to do is kind of create a client journey, and just find what entry point is their pain point and then try to cross-sell or build that relationship inwards. It's been a long time coming, and it's been a blast trying to figure out the best way to do it.
Wow. That does sound exciting, actually, and a nice formula for multiple lines of business. So are there specific lines or needs of clients that play well among the different business lines that are offered at Performance Group?
It's been interesting to watch because we purchased the agency and and I won't say the word assume because we all know what that means. But we didn't assume, but we thought that there was going to be such a connection with our current clients because at that point you had almost 15 years in business on the financial side and then, 7-8 years on the tax side. We thought people would be, knocking down the door to do insurance with us, right? Quickly realized how personal lines can be such commodities. And then there's a lot of different issues with the commercial side. So we were learning that it was going to take a much more proactive approach than just assuming people wanted to do business with us because we were who we were. So we've learned a lot of different things about how we need to kind of niche focus to the clients we already had on the financial and accounting side. So we've really grown our insurance practice to be more about work comp on the payroll side and farm agribusiness on the tax side, because that's where, a lot of people have big tax bills. So,
sure. And
that's where we specialize in those industries. So rather than trying to reinvent the wheel, we just work to our clients that we already have.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense. It's almost too logical, right?
Well, it took me 3 years to figure it out.
Oh, that's okay. So are there specific goals that you have in mind in terms of defining success at this point?
It's one of those things where we have these long-term relationships and we're just trying to cultivate them in all three ways. We recently rebranded. So when we purchased the agency, it was actually the Insurance Center of Pendleton. And part of that is that generalist, small town, Main Street America piece that we wanted to keep. It had 47 years of name branding, if you want to say that, a one-man shop. And it wasn't cohesive with the Performance Tax and the Performance Financial Group. So, January 1 of 2020, we rebranded to the Performance Group, where we do tax, insurance, financial services, and accounting. And that's allowed us to be much more cohesive with our dialogue with clients. And they pick up the phone a little bit more often for me.
Sure. Okay. And other... How should I put it? Is there a way of measuring the number of services that a client utilizes that you folks have in mind in terms of not just following the flow of what's a natural feed for your client in terms of what business they might next utilize, but is there like would you define success as the average client having three, doing business with three of the different business units, as it were, or no, you've not gotten to that point yet? Well,
we're kind of in the midst, so they don't exactly create management systems for all three things we do.
Good point.
We've had to part and piece things together to create these new types of reports to where, in most, legacy systems or these older insurance management systems, you can see how many policies people have. but you can't say, yes, they also do their taxes with us, or yes, they also do, they have an IRA, you know what I mean? Those types of things. So we're trying to piece and part technology to benefit us from a reporting standpoint. Or otherwise, it's on an Excel sheet with a big Venn diagram of who's in the middle.
Right.
I had a great conversation with Tammy Coleman. She was on my podcast on Monday morning, and she's actually in branding and marketing. And she was talking about how quantitative and qualitative data in asking your clients why they do business with you, or why, people don't do business with you, allows you to create a better target market or a better, customer persona. And I think that's really helped me think in the last couple of days. I need to take people from each part of that Venn diagram and ask them why they do business with us, and then take the person in the middle and ask them why they do business with us, and then try to steer people towards that and build our marketing around our customer, rather than, hey, we've got these 3 things and we would like you to do these 3 things with us.
Right. Okay. So understanding that, I guess I would just like to mention, I don't know that you're of a size yet that you would want to do this, although they've become much more affordable by different companies in recent years. But I'm thinking something along the lines of a customer relationship management system, a CRM, maybe at the top of the pyramid, so to speak, that then interfaces with the different business units. And I'm just throwing that out there as a marketing guy myself. So, as a way to do it, whereas the current systems you're working with, I understand completely don't actually interface or interact or connect with each other in your current business lines. So
yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great idea. And that's, the direction we're moving, as paper falls out. I think COVID's been great from a discussionary standpoint with my dad about what is the future and how do we grow this business at a scalable rate.
Sure. Okay. At least you guys are thinking about it, which is the key, right? So,
absolutely.
Okay. So let me, Sean, let me switch gears for a moment because you do make use of social media. And as you just mentioned, you make use of a podcast as a means for promoting your agency. But is that correct? Do you promote the agency, or do you promote the full breadth of services at Performance Group on your podcast and on social media?
Yeah, it's our social media is really more about all 3 things. It is hard, to try to convey our entire message every single time you post. So sometimes it's a tax post, it's a insurance post, it's with compliance, financial is a very interesting world anyways. Yes. So there's less marketing there. So we're just trying to drive people in the door and just let people know who we are. Okay.
So then let's talk about the podcast for a minute. How difficult has it been to establish, and are you measuring it for success in any way? And then will you continue, because I did listen in on 1 or 2, will you continue to maintain that local business focus on your podcast? In other words, you'll bring on a business person or business owner, if you will, from the community, and have them talk a bit about their own business. I mean, is that something that is working, and how's that all going?
It's been interesting. I listen to a lot of insurance podcasts, and I have, because that's kind of, between that and my underwriters is how I learned about the industry. So I was always very interested in starting our own. I just originally, when I started the Performance Group podcast, I started it to have, a voice and for people to hear what we have to say and promote the business. And I quickly found out as a younger man, it's a really cool place to listen to people talk. So I've found that these business owners who are local have never had the opportunity to tell their story, and a lot of them have a very great one. And they're very smart people, and business is very transferable no matter what business you're in. And the other thing is, originally I started with, clients and people that I know. And what it's done is these business owners are talking to other business owners. And I've got people who aren't clients reaching out to me, or I'm reaching out to them, and they're coming on the podcast now. And, at 25 years old, I'm building relationships with business owners in my local community in a world where it's pretty much shut down. So no door drops, and it's nice to go see people. And it's turned out to be an absolute blast. And as for measuring it, it's tough, because the one thing that my guests don't ask is how many people listen to it. They're just happy to come on, tell their story, post our picture, on Wednesdays, and tell their friends that they were able to do something. And if that's all I'm able to do and connect with people and meet people, then measurable ROI is hard, but I know it's there in the long term.
Sure.
And that's what I'm doing it for.
Great. Yeah, it does. It sounds like it's a great way to establish that rapport, get to know your fellow business people, right? And have that relationship in place for whatever comes down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do have a Q&A segment where I bring my dad and Eve in my office on, and that's where we kind of establish that, I would say, our voice to where we can solve problems and show people we have answers. So that's a little bit of using the listeners that listen every week and showing them what we're able to do, and then they'll call and we can do more business.
Very good. So let me think about that. So the way you just described it, are you actually like sitting down in person with these folks and, you have set up the mic kind of deal and having a conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. It was super sketchy when I first did it. Like I bought two $40 mics on the internet, but that's all you need. I've had a lot of mistakes. I've had some where you sit down for an hour with somebody, never actually hit record, or the mic wasn't plugged in all the way and it's halfway scratchy the entire time. But people are super understanding and they're willing to come back in, and they take the time out of their day to come in, take a picture in front of our mural, if I can say that word. Yeah. Because that's what we use as our cover art, which is actually just doing more branding for us, as these people then take their cover art and then post it on social media. Is we've got this big mural in front of our building now, and it's giving us a little bit more recognition in our community.
Sure. And I can imagine that's, you and I are more than 1,000 miles away from each other. We're connected in a studio online. I can imagine that if you were actually here in person and we were having the conversation, that there would be more of that rapport established. It's just, it seems natural, as it were. So
yeah, absolutely. And for anybody that's an agent that's looking to get into this, and by this I mean like small town niche podcasting, or asking people just to come into your office and record something. The best conversation I have with them is the hour after we get done, because they tend to stick around, and people tend to kind of pull their punches when they're talking to you on air, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So as soon as you hit that off button, you say, "How was it?" And then they'll just kind of release whatever extra tension they had, and you have a very good conversation for that last hour or 30 minutes or whatever it is before they jump out of your door.
Great. So I'm going to leave that for a minute, but it's nice. We've kind of given people a sense for how, an agent can actually have a podcast that works on multiple levels without, this huge investment or a huge investment of time. So I appreciate that you've informed our listeners about what you're doing there.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let me switch gears. I noticed that there are a number of younger folks at Performance Group. Is that your target audience, a younger demographic? And I ask that question based on what I see, but then I'm also understanding the other lines of business under that roof and wondering how does that reconcile. So is it the case that you're looking for a younger demographic?
It's interesting. I would say that my dad's always told me that you sell 10 years above and 10 years below. And when I got into this business, I was 21 years old, and 10 years below doesn't buy insurance. And 10 years above, they don't necessarily trust somebody who just got into the business. You have to build rapport. You have to find where you fit in. And I would say that I, especially in my early years, was not putting myself in the position to sell to the older ages and those types of people. And truly, the reason we have young people in our office now is we're finally growing at a point in Performance Group as a desirable enough employer that these kids are reaching out to us and they're looking for new opportunities. And they're also cheaper people to pay, if I can say that, kind of.
Sure. The early stage of the earning curve, right? So
yeah, absolutely. And they're willing to take the opportunity that we can provide, because we have 3 different modes of income or 3 different modes of interest. When you're young, especially, you don't want to be an accountant for the rest of your life. If you don't like it after the first 5 years, you can transition to financial or insurance, or you can figure out by dabbling in each what tickles your fancy. So my dad's always said, it's all about opportunity, environment, and money. And if you're in the right environment and we're creating a great culture for young people, then that's going to breed opportunities for young people, and then eventually money will come. So I think it's been really fun to have young younger people in here. And I say younger at 25. I've got a 19-year-old CSR, Gabby, who I just hired in September. She's the best thing that's ever happened to me. And then Eve, who's upstairs, he's dad's back end financial side, but he's the smartest human being I know at 22 years old. It's been an absolute blast to have such amazing staff and trying to see, where this rocket ship is going.
Sure. And that makes sense too. So along that line, or I should say related, you once mentioned to me when we spoke previously that you're a diverse business. And did you mean that in terms of the lines of business that you offer, your target market, or even the team at Performance Group?
Well, you could say all three, Doug.
Good.
Yeah. So obviously we do a lot of things here. And that allows for a lot of diversity within, income streams as well as just other opportunities. And then as for our team, absolutely, both Eve and Gabby are bilingual, which opens up an entire different market segment to us and to them. And what we're learning is how to maximize their time, their abilities, and this is kind of the future of an underserved market. And they're kind of establishing themselves as experts at such a young age, and it's been really cool to see from the outside looking in. So yeah, absolutely, we have a lot of diversity in our office now.
It's great. And is that a case of your community as well? Are you in a fairly diverse community, the business location?
I would say we're small town, central Indiana. The answer would be no. But if you look at the numbers, it's 100% increases year over year of the Hispanic community in central Indiana. And if you were to Google bilingual insurance agents, there's only one that shows up. So it's a community that's growing year over year. And I think it's only going to keep growing if we're being honest. And nobody's focusing on the right parts of coverage, education, and all those other things. So I think it's going to be this huge market segment that's just going to blow up, especially in the Midwest. And, you could say it in the South has already been blown up. And it's just, who's going to take that market segment?
Sure. And that sounds like seems like a sound plan, actually. So,
yeah, absolutely. And the biggest thing I would say is education. It's a group of people that have never, because half of these deck pages are all in English. Well, the majority of these deck pages all come in English. They don't have the ability to have a trusted resources that can speak both languages.
And that's a unique and positive angle as well. So good stuff there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk a little bit about what you see for the future. I mean, what are other than what we've covered here? You're making taking strides in terms of your marketing, whether it be social media, the podcast, etc. Your group, your team reflects a growing community or a growing segment of the community that you're in. What happens and how will you determine or measure your success going forward?
That's a great question. And I would say that this entire business is 15 years in the making, and we're just now hitting stride. We have hired 2 team members in the last year in the midst of a pandemic, and it has allowed us to really take a look at how do you make this a scalable business model and put experts in each field. When I first got in this business, I was the head of the insurance department. My dad's the head of the financial department. And then my stepmother is the head of our accounting and tax department. Mm-hmm. And we've added to that in the last year, and it's prepared us for long-term growth with great human beings that, they're here for an opportunity, and it's attracted more and more people to reach out and ask us for opportunities. So my dream has always been to be a place to build culture and build people, attract and keep good people. That goes for clients and for staff. And, the podcast, just as much as anything, is about attracting people to the Performance Group, whether you want to work here, be a client, or just be around, a good culture. Measurable, we'll measure that when it comes. I'm out here grinding every day, and I'll look at the monthly numbers, and as long as people are happy and numbers are up, then I can't complain.
Right. So as a young guy driving the success of a business segment under the Performance Group, what does your week look like? I mean, are you 40 hours in the office or 40 hours dedicated to insurance? I don't want to.
That kind of depends on the day. I would say that we also are connected to a laundromat. So sometimes you're over there cleaning up excess spills, or cleaning bathrooms, or you're picking up rent. There's a lot of different things that we do. I also coach high school wrestling, so my winters are a little bit different because I jump out of the office early, but I try to get in early. I also have an 18-month-old daughter who doesn't. Between her and my wife, I'm trying to give them as much time and attention as I can.
Sure.
So from a time perspective, I've been better lately about trying to time block and segment out my day and be intentional with my time. I now wake up every single morning and I write down, 3 things I'm grateful for. And that's just to kind of put everything in perspective, because you can't lose the day if you already have everything you could ever want. So The only difference in my 5-year plan is the view. Everything else I already have. So it makes it a lot easier to wake up and go grind all day and call people who don't want to be called, and try to establish relationships. And the podcast is fun because it also puts a little added pressure on me because I try to make it weekly, but I record weekly at the same time rather than doing batch recordings. So I always have that person I get to meet every week and make new connections. And I always told my wife I like to live my life on my toes, and that's came back to bite me in the butt a few too many times. So I'm trying to be a little bit better about blocking out time and focusing on, tasks.
Right. Well, you know what? It sounds to me like, as with so many things in life, it's all about balance, right? All about balance. And it sounds like you're kind of falling into that or making that balance achievable for yourself. And that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's great to have a great team around you who focus on making sure you keep up with your balance, which has helped me out a lot.
Nice. Okay. Well, this is good. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners relative to the Performance Group, or your success to date, or what you look for in the future?
The biggest thing that I would say is, especially if you're a young agent or if you're somebody that is stuck in a rut and you're looking to get into something new, the local podcast has been an absolute game changer for us. And it's not in the sense of business, but it's in the sense of networking in a world that has been closed down, and meeting new people, because, a business owner may not give you the time of day for a quick phone call, but if you ask them to sit down with you for an hour, it's a totally different conversation to tell their story. So that's been so nice for who's put me in front of new people. I've had the Chamber of Commerce call me, asking to have the president on, and no one's ever asked me about the numbers. People just care about the content, and they just want to be connected to people again. And I couldn't say that this has changed the way that I look at insurance and I look at this business, because it takes you out of insurance and allows you back into the relationship side that we've been missing for the last couple months.
Wow. Well, that's very insightful, actually, and I appreciate that you're sharing that with our listeners. I've really enjoyed having you on the podcast. Thank you for joining me today.
Absolutely, Doug. I really appreciate you.
Sure. All right. So our guest today has been Sean Kirby, insurance agent at Performance Group in Pendleton, Indiana. I'd like to thank our listeners for tuning into this episode of Insurance Agents Talk Shop. I'm Doug Coombs, Chief Marketing Officer at SIAA, and I hope you'll join us next time. To learn more about SIAA, the largest alliance of independent insurance agencies in the U.S., please visit SIAA.com. Thank you, everyone.